What I want to say first about Dante is that he really exists on a cusp between the 13th and the 14th century, which we are also now on the cusp. And his birth date is close to my birth date, if we were to think about this century. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He also invented the use of Italian, that is, he wrote in vernacular, not in Latin. He thought a lot about what is going to be modernity, although maybe they didn't call it that then. We understand it as modernity now. He also had romantic love. He had the love of Beatrice. For a long time, people got married because they were trying to figure out social mobility and consolidating power in families and in areas of Europe. And that was true, I think, of Dante, and he was promised to a different person and married a different person and had children by Gemma, but he was always very much in love with Beatrice, who died much earlier on. So he does make a poem, and his epic, The Divine Comedy, has to do with this romantic love, equating that with beauty, utopian ideals, and God. I would say that he's a reformer, and in that way I'm very interested in him. He also was quite pious in that he wanted to be more pious than the Pope. The church at that time was super corrupt and awash in all kinds of scandal, and Dante wanted to reinvent what it meant to have a relationship with God. He also thinks about the journey for God and for morality as being a human dilemma, and he writes about that in The Divine Comedy. And this is the painting by Sandro Botticelli. So you want to think a lot about the dynamics of the period and the area that he's in. Coincidentally, there was a medieval warmed climate at that time. You can look into that. The climate was warmer in that period of the medieval time. It then was coupled with a kind of ice time. They called it the Little Ice Age after that. But right about that time, it was warmer. And there was tumultuous society in Florence. And the struggle between the aristocracy and the merchant class, or the people trying to rise above their class, was very strong. We talked about the Ghibellines and the Guelphs. Secular medieval society started to form and become something in of itself. And innovations included the eyeglasses, the clock, the cannon as a weapon. Slavery was beginning to be used in mining operations and in other things. Slavery would continue, of course, over many, many centuries. So these are all the kind of dynamics going on. So in Dante's work, I'm much more interested in Purgatorio than I am in the other books. Everybody else can think about it in different ways. But you can see artists have been thinking about the journey and the kind of migration of populations in this idea of Dante's Divine Comedy. He also had a son, and his son made some manuscripts and also some poems, Jacopo. You could read a little bit more about them. And over time, people have been kind of reinventing their relationship to Dante and what he's trying to say. Here too are some diagrams of the journey towards enlightenment and human kind of perfection and paradise. And there was a kind of overlay of science in that. As too, there was this treatment of what a monster was. Monsters appear in Dante's work, as they do in the Bible and in other cultures as well. This is a William Blake painting. And here is Beatrice, this idea of the romantic love here, and all of the kind of eyes are forming the witness to what is a moral tale. So I want to say too now about refugees and migration. And I'm probably going to say some things that are fairly controversial, in that right now there are 21 million refugees moving across continents in the world, and many of them are originating in climate-induced hardships, and have been for a long time, many, many generations. But we're only identifying it as a climate problem, a world global problem, because it's starting to affect developed nations and other areas that have not been able to kind of see it. So here you can see the quote by Richard Seeger. We're not saying that drought caused the Syrian conflict, but we're saying that it added to all the other stressors. It helped kick things over the threshold into open conflict. And the drought of that severity was much more likely by the ongoing human-driven drying of the region. So here's a map here of migration, and these are migration by country and by volume. So you can see the amount of migrants and people moving from continent to continent and countries is really happening between Africa and Asia. There's a little bit in the US and a little bit in Europe, and I believe this was a 2015 map. But really, for a long time, it's been going from Africa to Asia and Asia to Africa, back and forth, and sometimes to Southern Africa and Southern Asia. So you kind of overlay with all these maps and think about it. So here, this is a map on extreme weather direct risks. So in the areas we see, you can see here rank 1, and then it goes down in color, yellow. You can kind of see what are some of the extreme weather vulnerabilities: sea level rise, storms, productivity loss. So you can kind of see this at a glance and kind of keep in your mind how it is affecting all of this area from which we live as well. And then you look at the maps of overall vulnerabilities. And this map is created for coping mechanisms, coping ability. So then you can reimagine here what's happening in Africa and Asia, and that's going to give you a kind of parallel to the former map that you saw. And then you can see here, in terms of the war in Syria, where have the Syrian refugees gone? Northern Africa, many in Canada, South America. So it starts to kind of create a picture, because we have a lot of mass media about the immigrants coming to Europe, and they're taking over certain areas. When you start to look at who's really taking the immigrants in. And then also you want to think about Hurricane Katrina and what happened after the hurricane, and where did those migrants go. These were American citizens. They became migrants. They were climate refugees. And they moved out of that area, and this is where they went. I remember in our college, in the California College of the Arts, where I'm a professor, we took in Hurricane Katrina students, and we were able to give them degrees for free tuition. So I think we took in 12, and every school had a certain amount of people that they took in. And here's another map you can sort of see. So this idea of migration and human population relocation is really the story of climate change that is not yet really being told. What will happen? What's going to happen? I have a lot of fear and sort of anxiety about, what is it going to mean? Let me just go back to this for 1 second. When the planet becomes so warmed, there's going to be areas that will be untenable. What year is that? Well, there's a lot of controversy about when that is and what's going to happen with it. There's a lot of denying we now know in our administration that's in power now. The state of Florida, if you look at the U.S. Geological Survey maps, the state of Florida has the water coming into about almost half the whole entire state, being so low-lying. So that was really stunning to me, to see all those maps and all what science brought us to in terms of climate. And as an artist, I thought, what am I going to do? I have to think of something. What can I do? How can culture do something that's adaptive or mitigative? And design, of course, can create some things that are going to adapt things like flexible architecture. I want to mention Kunle Adeyemi. He's a Nigerian architect who is really, I think, incredible. And he's making a lot of flexible architecture all over the world. In Lagos, he's made some in Chicago. He has a really interesting firm. I'd like to recommend him. An artist's role is to be less about mitigation and how we fit into things and how we deal with things, but more about disturbing the piece, a kind of way of thinking about things in a much broader and deeper way. And so I started to think about Dante because Dante was talking about cataclysm, social upheaval, movement of people, migration, change, innovation. There was a lot of tumultuous stuff. On the left here is just a little part of Longfellow's translation that was in 1992, and this is Canto 1. And then I just wanted to show you a couple of stanzas that I've done. So what I've done is decided to act like Dante. So without becoming a pious person, because I'm not sure I feel pious. I'm not sure I feel close to God, although I might someday. Who knows? I always keep a window open. But what I've done is I've taken all of the Christianity out of Dante. And here I have, if we want to leave, you can. I'm just passing these out for you guys. One is a Longfellow translation of Canto 1, and another one is my own translation and adaptation. And then I also have Canto 32. I've done Canto 1, 2, and 32. And so what I've tried to do is take those poems and secularize them, completely secularize them, as though Dante would have done this. Reform them, and then see what I have left. And what I have left is, to me, incredibly interesting. And it's become the source of a couple of projects, and I'm just going to show you really briefly. The first thing I'm going to show you is a really short trailer for a new film. Yeah, just turn them all off, yeah.
Those like us, the lost and found of paradise?
Aún así, Hortanes, veamos esta vista una vez más.
Particular scene. This scene is all using the Dante, the secularized Dante text. This takes place in Havana, in Playa de Santa Fe. And the actor is Javier Guiarte.
Aún así, mortales. Veamos esta vista una vez más. Vi una luz que venía acelerando sobre el mar, tan veloz. Un vuelo no conoce una sonrisa allí. De pronto giré inquisitivamente de vuelta a mi guía. Y luego, otra vez. Ahí. He aquí. Más grande, más brillante, ahora me parecía.
Okay, I just wanted to show you a quick little clip of that, because as you know, making a film is a big, long thing. Then, let's look at this. This is
The
also...
dead are in the dark. We left them behind. Did heaven change its place? We lost souls are singing from terraces now. Look there. This man has not seen his term of days, yet in his crazy wickedness he drew so near it, he had short breathing space.
So I was dispatched to show others hell. In doing this, you can see the next line of souls coming in from behind. No one knows who is coming. Liberty is dear, yes, especially those who seek it. I am with the seekers and those who don't find.
I suppose we should be gracious to all who are coming. Liberty is so dear, especially when you are seeking it. We know who gives their lives for it. Somewhere in the weeds is death's sting. Doom shines there so much it glistens. You were beautiful then, so much I would do anything for you. Chaste, truth, hearts and not 7 kingdoms. Remember, don't mention the place below. We are here now, and that's a small place really. I dwell beyond the evil river and cleanse its filth in my face as I would do for you. We would go with cloudy eyes to stand still. We are those of paradise. All around this small island, on the strand, far down below there, where the breakers strive, grow the tall rushes from the oozy sand. No other plant could keep itself alive, none that bears leaf or hardens in its prime and will not bend when wind and water drive.
I'm going to just stop the clip, but can I have the lights, please? So the text that I've used has been also, oh yeah, you want to see like a dizzy brain. The text that has been used has also been worked with in live situations. I've worked with the Cardew Choir and also a choir in North Carolina, reciting the text. And each time I do it, it takes on a different meaning, but it's super flexible. For instance, in Bennett College in North Carolina, it's an entirely African-American women's college, and they performed it as a kind of musical in the church, like inside the church, which was really kind of interesting. And then the actors here in Cuba also take on another thing, because we're now embarking on a relationship with Cuba from country to country that is quite different than it was. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, thank you very much. Questions?